Modern Minds on Jewish Matters Conversation Series. I want to express my appreciation to Albert and Heidi Proa and to Bill and Anna Tenenblatt for, there's a little bit of a vibration. Are you working on that? That's my job of introducing, getting all the kinks out today. When Michael Medved and David Suissa come up here, all the microphones are working. Okay, I want to express my appreciation to Albert and Heidi Proa and Bill and Anna Tenenblatt for sponsoring the series. And thank you, Albert, Heidi, Bill, and Anna, for all you do for the community and for your dedication and investment in the shul's programming. Thank you so much. So tonight we're here to talk about a very important topic to all of us, which is Israel. Beth Jacob, as a religious Zionist shul, cherishes its connection, its relationship with the land of Israel, with the state of Israel. Israel, I believe, I know many here agree with me, Israel is the great miracle of our generation. The return of the Jewish people to our homeland after 2,000 years, against all odds, in such a dangerous neighborhood, is just incredible. And it's something for us to be appreciative of, to draw strength from, and to make sure to continue to support, to advocate always for Israel. However, a significant percentage of American Jews, especially millennials, who have grown up with the state of Israel, are either ambivalent towards Israel or disillusioned by its policies, alienated from Israel. And so that's a big challenge for our community, and that's really what brings us together to address that challenge. And so to address this challenge, to address this disconnect, and to educate us about it, to help us better understand the American-Jewish relationship to Israel and the complicated nature of that, we have here with us, and great to welcome back, Michael Medved and David Suissa. Okay, so these are individuals who don't need an introduction. I'll just say two lines. Michael Medved and David Suissa are two prominent media personalities who are passionate about Israel and experts about the Jewish community, about the Jewish world. Michael Medved is someone who you know for a long time. He's the host of a nationally syndicated radio talk show that is broadcast on 870 here in this area. Many of you are fans of the program, right? And it's nationally syndicated. It actually airs on 334 different stations across the country, reaching an audience of over 4 million people. And so that just reflects the fact that he's one of the leading political and social commentators of today. And then we have David Suissa, who is the president of Tribe Media and Jewish Journal, whose weekly column over the last 12 years, at least 12 years, is very popular. And I'm sure many here are fans of the Jewish Journal and David's column. He's really an eloquent, passionate advocate for Israel, great knowledge of the Jewish community. And so this is going to be a very, very interesting conversation. Without further ado, it's a pleasure to introduce and let them take away the program. Michael Medved in conversation with David Suissa.
Thank you, Rabbi. It's good to be back home with Jacob. I always feel at home here. And I've been a big fan of Michael for years. In fact, I was at his house for Shabbat, I think 35 years ago on the beach at PJC. He didn't serve us too much food. I remember you were a single guy, you weren't married yet. But it's really an honor to be able to exchange words of wisdom with you on this subject. And I heard a disconnect with the rabbi saying, we waited 1900 years to come home. There's never been such an example of yearning in human history. It makes no sense. How do you not give up after 400 years or 1200? How do you never give up? So people like me have no conception of how that doesn't give you goosebumps and doesn't give you unconditional love for the miracle of Israel. as an editor-in-chief of a paper where 2/3 of my readers are Obama lovers and represent exactly what you were talking about, I think it's a fascinating subject, Michael, where just try objectively to understand what happened. And how could it be that this new generation of Jews has the chutzpah to look at Israel as like a mundane talking point? Now, I have some thoughts, and we're going to share some thoughts. I want you to kick it off.
Sure. I think that part of that stems from anti-Americanism, frankly. And it's interesting because for years and years and years, there are people, and there's some people on the right and some people on the left who always said that America is unpopular in the world because of Israel, because there's anti-Semitism and because America is so associated with Israel, and people take it out of the United States. I actually think the opposite happens. And the biggest form of hatred today in the world, the most absolutely ubiquitous kind of hatred, is hatred of the United States of America. And the reason that the people hate the United States of America, I think, is similar to the reason that people hate the state of Israel. There's no rational explanation for it. My most recent book is called The American Miracle, and it's basically, the original title was America is no accident. America, as I like to say, is not the product of random evolution, it's the product of intelligent design. And all of our founders believe that, even the ones who weren't particularly religious. And they also believed that America would be rewarded by helping the Jews. John Adams wrote in 1811, after he was president, long after he was president, John Adams wrote about the need for Americans to fulfill the biblical injunction that said Genesis 12:3, that those who bless you will be blessed and those who curse you will be cursed. And basically wrote to Mordecai Emanuel Goa, who was the first important executive appointee, who was proudly Jewish, that I hope to see you someday at the head of a grand Jewish army returning with America's help to Zion. And this connection between the American experience and the Israeli experience is far more profound than most people realize. And the one point I would make here is these are two countries that are not based upon blood and soil, like France is. Like all the countries in the world are to some extent. They're based on a good idea. And the good idea is the idea of human liberty, of self-determination, and yes, of faith in God. Because it's interesting, what does an American look like? Americans look Asian, they look Latino, they look white, they look Nordic, they look Mediterranean. As you all know, we used to not be counted as white people in the census. Isn't that terrific? We finally, seriously, and they were trying to restrict immigration in 1924. Right, with the Immigration Restriction Act of 1924, Italians and Jewish people were not considered white. Okay, Americans don't look like a certain thing. There's no American prototype. It's based on values and based on an act of choice. We are the choosing people, and because we are the choosing people, that obviously reflects the reality of Israel. Lincoln referred in 1861 when he was coming to Washington, it's in my book, he referred when he spoke to the New Jersey State Legislature in Trenton. He said, America, the almost chosen people. And look, that reality of the American fascination with the Jewish experience and very early Zionists, long before Herzl, who were Americans. One very colorful one of whom actually converted to Judaism, but that's another story. It's a remarkable association. And I think that part of the reason people take Israel so much for granted is they take America for granted. How can people here who have any knowledge of history at all, who know what our grandparents went through, who live the lives we live in Seattle, where I live, in Beverly Hills, in any part of Southern California, we live the ones that are unimaginable to Jewish people of the past. We were free to build great global institutions like this one. And to take that for granted, that's sick. It's just as sick as taking for granted the rebirth of the Jewish Commonwealth in the Middle East, as you say, during that 1900-year wait to come home.
I want to pick up on the formation of America, John Adams, built on the Judeo-Christian ethic, very much of a Protestant country that honors the Old Testament, as opposed to Europe, which is more of a New Testament country, which honors the victim, whereas the Protestant work ethic honors individual sense of responsibility, and that's how America was built and became a great nation. It seems to me in the past decade or two, Michael, this is starting to shift. We're becoming a country that's starting to worship victimhood, the powerless, the weak, and then Israel comes in with this incredible, one of the great success stories of the 20th century. And it looks powerful, it looks successful, it even looks Western, it even looks white. You wonder, is the world telling us we can't love you, Israel, until you become a victim? Is this what's going on now with the new generation?
Well, it is in America at large, and it is in the West at large. It's the consecration of victimhood, and we are all basically in competition to see who is the greatest victim and how dare you. And by the way, I think it's a terrible tendency in the Jewish community too. I do. Because we emphasize, do you remember that Pew study in 2013? It was the biggest study ever done about American Jews. And they asked people, what do you think is the most important aspect of Jewish identity? The most important aspect. By the way, when you went down the list following Jewish law, that was 5%. People did not think following Jewish law had anything to do with Jewish identity. Do you know what number one was? The Holocaust. Remembering the Holocaust. That was number one. And you had to go down to number 6. 89% said remembering the Holocaust is important to Jewish identity. Caring about Israel was 34%. And it was below having a good sense of humor. It was below pursuing social justice.
Are we partly responsible for that in the media world? If it bleeds, it leads. We know that if we exaggerate, if we dramatize, we're going to get more clicks, we're going to get more readers. I try not to, but it's endemic.
No, it is. It's terrible. One of the things that is great is when Israel is not in the news, because we don't have a news business in this country. We have a bad news business. The only time Israel's in the news is when somebody dies, or there's some attack, or there's some indictment, or there's something negative, or there's another indictment against the prime minister, or something's going wrong, right? And the fact is, the daily miracles of life in Israel, as folks here know, my brother made Aliyah 30 years ago, and has raised his 4 children in Jerusalem. And my late father spent the last 19 years of his life in Jerusalem. And every day is a miracle in Jerusalem. Every day is a miracle in Beersheba, or anywhere in Israel, or frankly anywhere in the United States.
One of my favorite books of Michael's is one that kind of shocked the industry, because the conventional wisdom is that the more drama and conflict and disaster you have, the more successful business-wise the movies will be. He did an analysis, if I remember correctly, that showed that uplifting films did really well. Am I remembering correctly?
You remember very correctly. In my book in 1992, that I was seriously attacked for. I mean, I had the reviewer in New York Magazine said, this is the stupidest book I have ever read to its conclusion. That was David Denby, who, the book was arguing with one basic fact, which is that Hollywood's bias for the bizarre was not motivated by the box office. When people say, oh, they'll do anything to win the box office, the reason most movies are rated R is not because of sex and violence. Anybody know why the movie's rated R? Do you know? Language! Yes, that's right. And I have never heard heard a single human being come out of a film and say, you know, I was really disappointed in this film because I didn't get to hear enough F-words. And no one thinks like this. This is part of the problem, is that folks have the idea of tragedy and earnestness and victimhood and suffering. Those are the only kinds of messages that are worthy of artistry or being considered art. And this is part of the problem, because one of the things, I know we must have some people here who work in the business, who work in the entertainment industry. If you make a beautiful film that touches people's hearts and uplifts them, you don't win an Academy Award, you don't win Critics Awards, you may make a lot of money, but if you want to be taken seriously, the best example of that is Martin Scorsese, who's a very skilled, very gifted director, but none of his films are big financial successes. They're not. The last one, which was about crucifying priests in Japan, honestly, it was one of the most graphic and gross and violent movies ever, very beautifully directed and shot. But they had to subpoena people to see that film.
You know, I'm going to share something private with you as editor-in-chief of the Jewish Journal, and it's a thought that's just entered my mind now, that if we have anti-Semitism at UCLA, if we have a swastika on the wall of a synagogue, that instant, huge readership. We know it's easy to write. Now, the stuff that's going to be uplifting, it could be just as powerful, but it's a lot harder to write. And this is the rub, and this is the challenge of an editor.
Did you cover the fact that in the midst of this, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, there was a yeshiva classmate of our son Danny, who was student body president of UCLA, who was not only a Jewish kid, but was a young very Jewish kid. When he got to be student body president, did you want to talk about that?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I didn't have with the paper yet. It wasn't the paper, it was the bad old days.
No, but it's true. It's like the uplifting stuff. You know, people always assume it's going to be kumbaya and everything, but there's a real compelling way of writing stuff that's deep and complex and uplifting. And we don't have to resort to this idea that turns the Holocaust into the #1 identifier of your Jewish identity. And I can tell you, if you want to do fundraising, you just do lots and lots of bad news. You do crisis. So there is a force of gravity that tries to inject crisis. The Tree of Life disaster was horrendous. It choked my heart, right? And then I did a little bit of research, and it turns out since George Washington made that famous statement in support of the synagogue in the South, there's been hundreds of millions of synagogue services in America. And to think that of these hundreds of millions of synagogue services, how many times did an anti-Semite walk into a synagogue and kill Jews?
And in fact, they say this was the largest, the 11 people who died, their memory should be a blessing. The 11 good neshamas who passed away, were slaughtered. That was the single bloodiest Jewish massacre of any kind, not just in the synagogue, in the history of the United States. We've never had a true American pogrom. We've had anti-Jewish riots, it's true. But never a true American pogrom when people were taken out and murdered and hanged and lynched. And again, the history was...
Michael. That would be Kadesh Menapah, right? On a mainstream newspaper, you had huge Hebrew letters. I'm not sure that ever happened in Jewish history. A mainstream paper in Pennsylvania had that. So Michael and I are not trying to minimize tragedies, but I tell you, as a media guy, it's so tempting for me to just write with these tragedies.
I want to tell you something. This is in my new book. It's not in the other one. I just love this story, and you'll pardon me. It's when Theodore Roosevelt died in January of 1919. There was a Jewish police lieutenant, his name was Otto Raphael, who came to his funeral at Oyster Bay. And he was one of the people there in the casket. He was his great friend, President Roosevelt. And he stood over the casket and he said, "Kaddish." And they asked him afterward, they said, why did you say Kaddish for President Roosevelt? He was a Christian. He said, because he loved our people. And then he told a story, which I've actually checked out. It's pretty amazing. He was, before he became president, before he was a Rough Rider, before he became governor of New York, he was police commissioner for the city of New York. And they had an anti-Semite, the guy who, by the way, was worshipped by Hitler in Arsenal later on, named Director Alvord, who was coming over from Germany to speak to the substantial German community about why they had to drive the Jews out of the United States, because Jews were ruining the United States. And a number of Jewish leaders came to Police Commissioner Roosevelt. He said, "You have to stop him from speaking." He said, "I can't do that. We have a constitution." He said, "But I'll take care of it." They said, "But you have to do something." He said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." And when Pastor Alvord arrived, there were 40 of the burliest, toughest Jewish policemen showing yarmulkes and standing all around him, and he didn't say a peep. Because they were standing there, and again, this was one of those things that indicates to so much else that America has been distinctive, unique, different from any other nation.
How much influence do you think, I mean, you've been a cultural critic now for 30-some years, you've done thousands of movie reviews. I have a theory that the Jewish comedians, hundreds of them, are more responsible for fighting anti-Semitism than any other group of Jews, because when you make somebody laugh, it's a soulful, intimate thing that really generates affection. So in the great love affair between the Jews and America, how much does culture play a role? In addition to the great leaders like Heschel and so forth, and the Sorbellos and the great, political and powerful real estate and Hollywood, how much do the comedians have to do with the love affair between America and the Jews, in your view?
It's so funny because things connect. Today at the radio station, I was doing my show live today from KRLA. And it was a man named Eric. He's a Christian guy from Minnesota who was helping me. He was sort of the engineer. And he was saying, "Do you mind asking kind of an off-the-wall question?" And I said, "Sure." And he says, "Do you have any affection at all for the Three Stooges?" And I said, "Okay, I gotta confess it. I'm a Jewish kid from Philadelphia. Larry Feinberg, as in, was Larry of the Three Stooges. The others, Shemp and Joe, Curly Joe, and Mo were all Howard. They were all brothers. They were all Jewish. Mo was Moshe, right? And so the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers and the Rich Brothers and Jack Benny. I still crack up listening to some of those old texts. Correct. And they didn't make a big deal out of being religious, though they all went to worship Boulevard Temple. Virtually all of them. We made America laugh. They made America laugh. And one of the very funny things about Jack Benny, I was just thinking about it, was real name was Benny Kubielski. Jack Benny actually made a point of humor on the idea that he was cheap, without ever referring to being, there's an old radio segment with Jack Benny where he's walking and a bandit comes up to him and he says, "Your money or your life?" And there's silence. He says, "Did you hear me? I said, your money or your life?" And Jack Benny says, "I'm thinking about it." So, I tell my cousins in France that in America it's kind of cool to be Jewish. They think I'm weird, I come from Mars, they have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's true, it's cool to be Jewish. So the Jewish brand has been pretty strong, generally speaking, in America. And now, like we were talking, Israel has come into the picture, right, the Jewish state. And there is a school of thought that was started by a famous essay by Peter Beinart 8-some years ago, the New York Review of Books. And the theory that
time was that the reason we're losing all these millennials that Rabbi was mentioning is because the Jewish establishment was too automatically pro-Israel. It didn't have the chutzpah to criticize Israel in public. Hence, the new generation feels that we didn't tell them the truth about the mistakes and the blunders that Israel makes and the oppression about Palestinians and so forth. What do you make of that theory?
I think you were closer, much closer to the truth at the beginning of this conversation, where you said that Israel had the trepidation, the audacity, the, dare I say it, chutzpah, to refuse to be a victim. And in a country right now where so many people in the establishment consecrate victimhood, that in the eyes of many people is unforgivable. And by the way, just look back at the history. One of the extraordinary things is there are a few people here who might be old enough to remember 1967. But in 1967, there was an amazing change. Many Jews who had never had particular feelings for Israel. Norman Podhoretz wrote a piece in the New York Times Magazine, actually, called Instant Zionism, where people who had been sympathetic to the American Council of Judaism and anti-Zionist stuff on the left, and all of a sudden, they rallied to Israel. But for the world at large, and particularly for the organized left, Israel as a powerful military country, it became an economic power later, it's just not appealing. People like the idea of, I'm going to send a few quarters and we're going to help starving people. By the way, I'm going to confess something here. One of the things I really despise seeing on Fox News when I have it on is this time of year in particular, they have ads from a certain organization about feeding starving Holocaust victims, survivors in Israel, that you have to send money to Israel. Israel does a darn good job with social welfare. They really do. And the idea that American Christians have to send money to feed our people, I find those those are some of one of the ads that we refused on our show for that reason. In any association of Israel with success, with dynamism, with profit, this is wonderful, and it's wonderful particularly for people who experience it, which is why that whole birthright program is so important. But I think what a lot of people talk about millennials moving away from Israel is Israel, it's not to feel sorry for Israel. It is easy to feel admiration.
And they're also moving away from Judaism, and it's hard to separate the two. Because if you, in that essay from Reinhardt, he mentions that the real problem is the disconnection with Judaism. And the more connected you are with Judaism, the more connected you'll be with Israel. But I wonder, Michael, if this is sort of the price we're going to have to pay. When you look at polls, the irony is that generally speaking, the American population is still very supportive of Israel.
It's more supportive than ever before.
Than ever. So it's almost a insidious Jewish problem that we have among us, where this movement away from Israel, ironically, is a Jewish problem, right? And it's hard for me to sort of give up on it. At the same time, I wonder if this is the price we have to pay for success. And if we're not ready to make this deal, the only way you're going to owe us is if we're going to be our victims. Are we ever going to get to a point where we can manage this movement, or do you think it's something that we should take on as a challenge and see if we can correct it?
Look, I think the main thing is for people to see Israel and experience it. And you probably know that today in America, and what I find so ironic and painful about this is if you're looking at Sefer Devarim, if you're reading the Torah, and you see that Moshe Rabbeinu, the saddest moment is he can look and he can see the promised land, but he can't go in. We can go in for a few dollars. You can do it at any time. And 75% of American Jews of every age have never set foot in Eretz Israel. They've never been there. And one of the most important things, by the way, this is a shameless plug. We do that from time to time on our show. We're taking a trip to Israel with listeners, Christians and Jews, in September. And you can find out about it on our website. And we're doing it together with George Gilder. George wrote a wonderful book called The Israel Test.
Israel Test.
And which, by the way, was based in part through my introducing George to my late father, who was living in Israel at the time, and George visited him. Anyway, it's a great thing. Come with us on the trip. And if you know somebody who's always thought, maybe I'd like to go see Israel, and very much includes non-Jews, it's so important, because what we find is the people who come home from these trips, this is the 12th one we're doing, the people who come home from these trips are instant Zionists. Whether they're Jewish or Christian or nothing in particular. I was looking at, because of the conversation we're having, I was looking at that Pew poll. And what's fascinating is they asked Jews of various types, do you believe that God gave Israel to the Jewish people? It's an interesting question. And I was stunned. Overall, among American Jews, 44% think God gave Israel to the Jewish people. It's a lot. It's more than I would have thought. They asked people who said they don't believe in God. 20% of people don't believe in God. Think that God gave Israel to the Jewish people.
This guy I don't believe in still did some really good things. You know, it's funny, I've been at this for many years. You know, as God for Israel, it has consumed a great part of my adult life. So it's rare that I will hear something new. And yet, last week, I had this wonderful non-Orthodox rabbi come to my office, a big lover of Israel, used to be in Hollywood, he was a screenwriter. One day he decided to become a rabbi, a conservative rabbi. And he shared a word with me that I hadn't heard before at Israel. And I just thought the word was so powerful. And he said, this word is really the word that can help the new generation when it becomes Israel. And the word was endearing. But Israel has an endearing quality to it. There's a humanity to Israel that transcends the start of a nation. And the great Zionists and the miracles that we do in Israel, and it also transcends, going to the West Bank and seeing that part of it. Just something that just appealed to me. And he's right. There is an endearing quality to Israel. The street life, the neighborhood feeling, there's a new expression that you're going to all see tomorrow in the Jewish Journal on the cover. It's a new book that's not in English. And it's called, a Jew's Way. There's a different Judaism that's happening in Israel. So maybe we can just spend a minute, talk about that word. How does that strike you? The idea, you've been to Israel many times. The idea of Israel having an endearing quality, not that big, powerful Israel.
I think that's lovely, and you can say endearing and enduring. Which obviously fits together. But I think that's exactly right. And I'm sure that's true for everybody here. How many people here have lived in Israel? Okay, I assume that there would be many, right? But for those who haven't lived there for long periods of time, can't you think back on any number of things that happened in every trip to Israel that make you smile? Just because they're crazy and strange and only in Israel, and they're endearing. I like that. One of the things that was endearing is I remember one of our early trips after my brother had just made and he was taking us. He had taken us out for a teal, for a hike, and then he was rushing back at the last minute for Shabbat, and we were rushing for Shabbat. And he was trying to, because there was traffic, he was trying to drive around it, so he went on the side streets. And we were stuck in the neighborhood, and Jonathan had no idea where he was. So he immediately gets out of the car, and there are people on the street. And he says, which way? We have to get back to Bakal, which is where they lived. And the guy started telling him, and then the other one started, no, And then suddenly there were like 6 people who almost were coming to blows, trying to agree on the directions that they were going to give to. Now this, I love the fact that they actually had to bolt the chairs in the Knesset down onto the floor so they wouldn't be thrown. And this is, I don't know, every part of a family of 4 boys, all of this is very endearing.
If we're going to get into stories, I have to interject. So a friend of mine, been living in Israel for 35 years, comes from a well-known family in New York, and says, tell me one story for me that captures Israel for you. She says, first of all, I was working for this restaurant. I heard it was fantastic. Those were the days when you would call an operator, and they would give you, the information. So she calls, can you give me the information for this restaurant? And the operator says, you don't want to go there instead. It's a terrible restaurant. Excuse me, man. Wow. There is no place like Israel. So we're going to shift now a little bit because I read something by Michael today that moved me deeply. 4 years ago, he had a major challenge. And if you don't mind, if I can bring it up. Okay. He had cancer. Many of us were praying for him deeply here. And after, thank God, his recovery, you wrote or said something that really struck me, which is, from this day forward, everything I'm going to write, do or think is going to be informed and influenced by what happened to me. What does that mean? And how does that expressed itself?
One of my favorite quotes, I wish it was from a Jewish guy, it's not, it's from a British novelist named Ian Forster. He said, death destroys a man. Knowledge of death saves him. And when we're younger, before you've had, I think, a really serious illness, you sort of instinctively think, it's always going to be like this. I'm always going to be fine. I'm always going to be alive. And then all of a sudden we get a cancer diagnosis. I got diagnosed in December of 2014. And I had stage 3 squamous cell throat cancer for people who are cancer. I'm sure there are other people here who are getting through cancer problems. And by the way, this is one of the things, and it is a gift from Kodesh Baruch Hu, it is a gift from God, that we live in a time when you can survive these things. But all of a sudden, you go through a situation where I lost about 70 pounds, and I lost my hair, and I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and they tried to give me fentanyl. And I was very resistant to the fentanyl, but it was an experience. And there is no way that you go through any serious illness without it changing you out. I'm sure that there are people here who are like that. And also, it made me feel so good about what I do. Because during the time I was sick, I got over 25,000 emails or letters, notes that came in of people who said they were praying for me. And there were 3 Catholic churches. I was deeply touched to have special services of healing for me. I'm not a Catholic. And I say in my book, in American Miracle, I thank all the people who wrote in, because I couldn't thank them all personally. And I say, I don't know if your prayers help my body heal, but I know they help my spirit heal. And they did. And here I am, and I got sick right after our son's wedding, and we now have 2 granddaughters, and life is incredibly good. And that's all.
Speaking of a good life, you do something very few radio commentators do, which is you don't stay in your silo, and you reach out, you've had some far leftists.
I've had Noam Chomsky on my show
Chomsky.
3 times.
Unbelievable. You know, it's...
I had David Duke on my show.
That always blew me away. So, I'd like to ask you if you had any moments where you had doubts over what you did, where the disagreement was so sharp, where you said, oh my God, was there one of those sort of really dramatic moments? Or what was the moment that was the sharpest disagreement?
David Duke. Because the reason I had him on is he had taken part of my book, Hollywood versus America, and he has a book, David Duke, for those who may not know, former head of the American Nazi Party, former head of Ku Klux Klan. He has a book called My Struggle, which sounds familiar, right? Mein Kampf, right? So My Struggle has a whole section that is allegedly based on my book, Hollywood vs. America. Except it quotes me as saying things that I never wrote and never said and never would say. About how the Jews were to blame for Hollywood's degradation and things of that nature. I have a chapter in that book saying, "Paul, don't blame the Jews." Talking about the fact that Jewish people, at a time when Jewish people really did dominate Hollywood, there was a much more wholesome, much more America-loving, much more affirmative point of view than in this now international, it's a very different world. In any event, because that argument was so heated, and I called him out and I was able to prove, I had his book in front of me, and that's why I had him on. I wanted to show the whole world, I didn't write these things. You are lying. You say you're concerned with the truth. You say you want to get to the truth about the Holocaust. You tell lies. And I was very aggressive, and kind of lost my temper.
What was his reaction?
His reaction was, no, I'm sure I read those. And then at the end, he said, well, if I made a mistake, I apologize. I said, I accept an apology for a mistake. This wasn't a mistake. This was a deliberate lie. And it's a deliberate lie because you want to kill my people. And I got excited.
I think that's kind of justified. Anti-Semitism from the far right, David Duke. Anti-Semitism from the far left, Louis Farrakhan. Which one's more dangerous in your view here in America right now?
The far left. I think that, by the way, we shouldn't minimize the dangers on the far right. They're real. And I think we saw that in Pittsburgh. I mean, that guy was not reading the Daily Worker. He was reading right-wing crap, and there's more of that than there ever has been. But you don't have the equivalent of Farrakhan. Farrakhan is honored by the Democratic Party. Honestly, for those of you here who may be Democrats, they should have nothing to do with Farrakhan. And by the way, from what I understand, there's several of the Democratic potential nominees who are going to be very outspoken about that. They cannot honor this man when he says, I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm an anti-termite. And of course, that's directly Hitlerian. And he, do you know what Farrakhan did in his gesture instead of peacemaking with the Jewish people? He's a pretty good musician. He played the Mendelssohn violin concerto. And only a Nazi would think Mendelssohn is Jewish. He was baptized Christian. And yes, he was the grandson of Moses Mendelssohn. But in any event, I think the left is more dangerous because there is more international support. And by the way, many of these left-wing regimes are also profoundly anti-Semitic. The Maduro regime in Venezuela, which is one of the nightmare regimes in the world, is profoundly anti-Semitic. And all around the world is a danger, I think danger primarily from the organized left.
Now, Michael, you took some heat, and you were one of the courageous conservatives who was honest, you kept your integrity, and you called all the stories with Donald Trump. It is what I like, it is what I don't like, but we're living in a very polarized world, and you and Ben Shapiro and Jonah Goldberg, you were in that genre of conservatives who just told it like it is, and Clubhammer. like Grubham, and then, our good friend Dennis Prager sort of, went all in. Tell us about how you reconcile somebody who gives us something incredible, like moving the embassy to Jerusalem, reaffirm the connection with this city that's been ours for 3,000 years. So how do you reconcile a horrible character flaw, undermining true conservative principles and so forth, with a positive outcome? How do you do that?
I think every human being, every president is a work in progress. And one of the problems in my life is I'm not willing to prejudge President Trump. I think he's done a lot of beautiful things. I do. I think his appointments to our courts, almost without exception, these are outstanding people. Outstanding people. And Brett Kavanaugh, I happen to know. One of my friends from law school is a very prominent Democrat who knows Brett Kavanaugh socially. He says he's a huge philo-Semite. He's a big supporter of Israel. And not that that's the only thing that matters in the Supreme Court. He's a man of fine character. And so is Neil Gorsuch. And so is Nikki Haley, who President Trump brought to the UN.
You thought Michelle was going to be a man? And we were.
No, but at the same time, you see, this is the problem. I don't fit in, really, in this world, because basically in the media, if you turn on MSNBC, and if Trump cures cancer, he will be attacked for taking work away from doctors. And if you tune in most of talk radio, including most of the stations I'm on, if Trump starts World War III and there are millions who die, well, you don't understand. He has a long game. He's playing the long game. This is what he does because he's a master negotiator. Look, Trump is a work in progress. And today, I think, was a good day for President Trump. Yesterday, I thought it was a horrible day for President Trump. And again, I feel it's my job to try to approach each day anew and to watch the way this thing unfolds. I should say to people, I'm sure many of you know, to my regret, I'm not going to be on AM 870 after the 1st of January. And no, I'm not. And not only
you can still do it.
Yeah, but the show is continuing, and we're continuing in a bunch of other stations, and we're also doing we're going to be doing a commercial-free version of the show that is available. Go to michaelmedved.com, sign up to be a Medhead. The first month subscription is 99 cents, and please do, because again, I want to continue this show, despite the fact that I was unwilling to commit in advance to support President Trump for re-election. Because I don't know. I just don't know, and we'll see.
Now, Michael, you've worn like a whole bunch of hats in your life, right? You went to Yale Law School, and then you decided to become a speechwriter. You worked in politics, you were a consultant, you were a bestseller based on Time Magazine. They picked like 35 graduates from Palisades High School over in LA. It's a famous story. And then Michael just researched them. And whatever happened to the class of 65, and it became a big bestseller. And then you got into culture, you became a famous movie critic, and you did that for years, and then you did it in writing, you did it on television, and then you became head of a synagogue on the beach, and you did a TV show and a radio show. Out of all these hats, is there one that you say, well, that's the one I sort of love the most? Like movie critic, for example? Not that one. Tell us which hat that you really feel is you.
Probably this one. My wife teases me about it. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because Pacific Jewish Center, which is still going strong, and I still stay in touch with a lot of our friends who are there. And I think that the new rabbi there, Shalom Rabinowitz, is doing an outstanding job from what I understand. And that enterprise began in my living room. And that's really important to me. There is a day school that here in town that has gone through various permutations, which I started together with Rabbi Daniel Lapin, and it's now Yeshivat Orel Yahoo. Now it's moved around, it's different leadership, but it's an institution. And where I live now, I've been for 22 years now, a very active member. Yeah, it's really a very active member in Island Synagogue in Mercer Island, Washington. And I was instrumental in getting our new synagogue building, which is on 3 acres of land. And it's really, really a beautiful synagogue building that we had to do very little. It's a former Christian Science church. It's a long story. And so that stuff matters to me. And then second, writing books. Since I was a little kid, I wrote my first book when I was in 8th grade. It was terrible. And then I wrote a book in high school, and then I wrote a book for my senior project at Yale was a novel, and I have an absolute use. I never talk about this. This will stump your friends with Michael Medved trivia. I have a master's degree in creative writing, which together with $2.50 can buy you a Starbucks.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, right. So with books, having 13 books to put on the shelf. And of course, the most important hat is being husband and father. But I'm sure you would say the same.
Well, who would like to see Michael more in the Jewish Journal? Of everything I've seen in your writing, and I've been reading you for years, you wrote a piece for Olam magazine that you may not remember. And I don't know, it really moved us.
About Shabbat, right?
It was a piece on Baal Tshuvos.
Yeah.
On Baal Tshuvos. And he did a whole different take. And the take was, when you find God, you become religious, you put on tefillin, you're madly in love with this new thing. I own the truth. This is the truth from Sinai. It turns out your parents are not exactly kosher, and you have these conflicts. And Michael wrote this incredible take, like, don't get too smug. Remember where you come from. You were eating bacon 2 years ago. Don't get too cocky now. Do you remember that piece?
I very much do, because it was largely based on what another great lover of the Jewish people said, Mark Twain. He said, when I was 17, I knew that my father was a complete idiot. When I was 27, I was amazed at how much the old man had learned in just 10 years. And this was my own experience. I went in the course of about 6 weeks from thinking that my parents were old-fashioned and too traditionalist and constricting, and they weren't modern. And then a few weeks later, I started making my first sort of steps to being observant at all. And all of a sudden, my parents, they were assimilationists, they were so compromising, they weren't authentic Jews. And this happens to too many Bali children, but here's the basic point. You will find sometimes among people who are new to Judaism, and you'll ask them, well, what were your parents? Oh, they were nothing. Now, it turns out, if you ask a little deeper, he was a president of the conservative shul. And in other words, I think that we have a real problem. It's a problem of gaiva. It's a problem of arrogance, which is difficult, which is to, in a way, boost our own religious credentials and status by minimizing the religious commitments of our parents. And by the way, when I say this, my parents, my mom, we kept kosher until I was 6, and then she got in a fight with a kosher butcher, and then we didn't eat kosher. Never when I was growing up, even when I was very young, did my parents keep Shabbat. But my mother lit candles every Friday night, God bless her. My father came home from work, he said Kiddush. They were always members of the shul. They always made sure we went to Hebrew school. They were in the top percent of American Jews, really non-Orthodox Jews, because they weren't Orthodox. And again, and I think it's because of that all of my brothers, all 3 of my brothers have become religiously involved. 2 of my brothers, many of you know my brother Harry and my brother Jonathan, who's famous because he's Israeli African-American, really seriously religious, and their kids are religious. But that's partially because of where my parents started as a home. And my father, of course, before he moved to Israel, the last 25 years of my dad's life, he was an amazing mind. He used to love to lane. He had never laned. He didn't lane for his bar mitzvah. But he laned for the first time when he was 53 years old. And he was an excellent ball poet. And the Shabbat before he died, we came out for his 83rd birthday, and my brother Harry, who lives here in California, and me, so that we could hear my dad laying his entire parsha in Yerushalayim. And the next week he was gone.
On the film, but how many movies have you seen in your life? 3,000.
I've seen too many this year, and way too many in my life. No, it's many.
4,000, 5,000. So
When I was chief film critic for the New York Post, that was over 300 movies a year.
right.
So it's 300 movies a year, and that was 5 years of that, so that's 1,500 movies. And then, see, it's a lot of movies.
So I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask probably unfair questions on the film. I'm going to answer. What's your favorite movie? You have one.
I do, and I usually, depending on the crowd, I will give 1 or 2 answers, so I'll give them both here, because this is, split down the middle. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington with the great Jimmy Stewart. This time of year, everybody, certainly anybody who's Christian, watches It's a Wonderful Life, but I don't think you have to be Christian to love that movie. Frank Capra directed It's a Wonderful Life. He directed Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's an amazingly patriotic movie. And it portrays some of the timeless conflicts in politics and shows why politics really, and the American government is a miracle and can be heroic. Plus it's a wonderful romance, plus it's just so splendidly acted, and it was a miracle year for Hollywood. 1939, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington came out, same year as Gone with the Wind, same year as Wizard of Oz, same year as Wuthering Heights. Okay, 1942. Right after that was another movie that I just love, The Tree Grows in Brooklyn, with Peggy Ann Garner and Dorothy McGuire and John Philip Dunn, and it's a story of an immigrant family. He's an Irish singing waiter. The mother takes him washing. They have a little daughter living in the tenements in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, and she wants to be a writer. And her father is a horrible drunk, and yet she thinks he's the most wonderful man in the world. And it always makes me cry, because it's a father-daughter movie. And, I've been blessed with the world's 2 most wonderful daughters.
I got 4 of them.
But there's something special about father-daughter. People understand father-son. But the father-daughter thing, The Tree Grows in Brooklyn, and if you haven't seen it, many of you haven't, it's Steven Kazan's first movie. It's in black and white. It is absolutely gorgeous, and he does something in that film that's masterful. I know I'm going on too long. But what he does is it's all ambient music. It has a very rich soundtrack, but it's the music you hear on the street of a hurdy-gurdy, or somebody singing, or someone playing the piano in the window across the street. And it's magical.
Now, have you seen anything in the last few years in modern Hollywood that captures some of that you love?
I hate to say it. There are a couple of films this year.
Tell us.
My two favorite films of the year are Roma, which is a film in Spanish. I think it's going to win the Oscar for Best Picture. And it's a memory film by Alfonso Cuarón. And Roma is a reference to a neighborhood in Mexico City, Colonia Roma.
Where he grew up, black and white, masterfully filmed.
Have you seen it?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly moving film. It's full of pain, but also redemptive love. And my second favorite film of the year, and I honestly believe it's a great movie, and I bet many of you have seen it, is Won't You Be My Neighbor? It's the Fred Rogers movie. And that movie is so gripping. And by the way, he was a biblical scholar and loved classical music. I had the great privilege of meeting him twice.
Star is Born?
Star is Born I thought was great, and certainly the best version of Star is Born. There's something, I thought Green Book was actually a very touching movie with Viggo Mortensen. So there's actually some stuff to watch. Please don't go see Vice. Please don't go see Vice. That's the Dick Cheney movie with Christian Bale. It's basically a monster movie. It's the same way that you never have to explain why Godzilla is going to stomp Tokyo. Here, they never bother to explain why is it that Dick Cheney wants to do all these evil things. He's just bad.
Now, it's interesting because we all know Israel, we really understand popular culture. Have you ever seen a movie that deals with Israel that you think can reach the millennials? Whether it's a documentary or whether it could be one on Judaism or Judaism, which was...
I was just thinking of Judaism. And again, there was another film called Philly Memorial, which is also a beautiful film. By the way, there's this little film, Menashe. Anybody here seen Menashe? Which I thought was a remarkable film. And who knew that this whole development of Haredi cinema, it's unbelievable. And female directors of these all Haredi cast movies.
And this is interesting because a few years ago there was this movie that became celebrated in the New York Times. It was called The Gatekeepers. It was a nasty anti-Israel movie done by a leftist who was my daughter's teacher at IBC, and I did my research on the film, and it was so biased. And it turns out that whatever he was preaching in the movie had already been done by Sharon. It's a long story, so I caught him and I wrote a whole column on it. But the thing is that he was in the top 10 in the New York Times. So there's almost a reward mechanism. Whereas do a movie that beats up Israel, do a movie from the left, and you'll be celebrated on the New York Times.
This is one of my, I do think that Schindler's List is a great movie. And it's a great movie because it's about the seductive power of goodness. It's about how someone can turn around his life and make a difference. And I was so much looking forward to Munich when that came out. How many people here saw Steven Spielberg's Munich about the Olympic massacre? Yeah, it was a horrible film. I really thought it was one of Spielberg's least artistically worthy films. And yeah, it was written by Tony Kushner, who was no relation to White House Kushners. And in fact is a self-described communist. He's very open about it. And an Israel hater, and a self-hating Jew. And it's such a shame. There are people talk about this all the time, and I know there are other people here in the business, but Otto Preminger, who made Exodus, right, in 1966, Paul Newman making a really saying, pretty pro-Israel movie, to say the least. He was developing all his life a project written by Danny Kurtzman called Genesis 1948, which was about the war for independence. And there's scripts kicking around. That would be a great movie. But the problem is in the Israeli film industry, one of my nephews is breaking into the Israeli film industry. Most of the people are on the far left. like they are here. And do you know anybody in the nationalist idea that Israel would make that kind of movie, showing the incredible miracles and heroism of Israel's struggle for independence?
I do. David Manning.
Yeah, interesting point.
Yeah, I've met him a few times. He was really eager to do a film on Medved. But I think the other one is even more interesting because it's the formation of Israel, and people sort of overlook the real miracle war of Israel was that one.
And this is true. This is one of those things that we do on we had a broadcast that's been our most popular history program ever, which is about the birth of the state of Israel. The war for independence, 6,000 people lost their lives. The Israeli population at the time was 600,000. That would be the equivalent today of 3 million Americans dying. More people died in the war for independence than all of Israel's other wars combined. And that sacrifice, people say, well, what right does Israel have to exist? That way.
Amen. On that note, I want to thank Israel Michael, the new speaker of the meeting at Planet America. And I want to ask the rabbi, are we allowing time for questions? Or it's your call?
I guess it's your call.
Okay.
There were a couple of David.
All right, let's have a few questions, because he has to catch a flight.
And I'll try to answer quickly.
Okay, so we have 10 minutes. Yes, first of all.
So, with the media being against Israel, front page of the LA Times last week, a few people didn't like the going to Israel, that movement, and that made the front page. And people wanted to see only negative things, like poor Palestinians, kill my parents, I'm an orphan. Is there any hope, giving money to camera, what's the point? It sounds like there's no way of combating those.
The point is the New York Times is less influential than ever before because of the internet. Because everybody, you can go to the Jerusalem Post, you can go to Israel Hayom, you can go to Al Shema, you can go anywhere you want. And we don't have to depend on the New York Times. And the people who tend to read the New York Times and to take that stuff seriously are people who are already committed on the other side.
Okay, one more question? Yes, sir.
When did you find out Salem was taking you off, and was it basically because you wouldn't commit to endorsing the president for re-election?
No comment. It's one of those things where there are a lot of very good people. I have wonderful friends who work with that company. But this has been an increasing problem since the middle of the campaign. And again, I'm not a never Trumper. And I do, that people hear the show, I do praise the president when I think he does something wonderful, and he has on many occasions. But when did I find out? I found out at the beginning of November. But I kind of knew because my contract was up, and however, I do want to say one thing very clearly. I'm sure that the way they explain this to stockholders and others is, it was financially necessary. We had, of the 21 years I've been with this company, we had the third best year in terms of profitability for the company that we ever had. That's not why I'm going away, but I'm not going away. The show continues, and I am very determined that there is some room in between the two extremes.
All right, on that note, thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.